Live now to Liberal frontbencher, Minister for Superannuation and Financial Services, Jane Hume. You heard there, cost of living, potent issue in the seat of Swan, as it is in other seats around the country. How difficult will it be around kitchen tables of this nation if rates do rise tomorrow, as many expect?
Kieran, we know that John Howard was the one that said that he can't remember an election that hasn't been fought on issues around cost of living, and this one will be no different. Tomorrow, if the Reserve Bank chooses to increase interest rates, we know that there will be a lot of people that are feeling the pinch in their pockets, and that's why at the budget only a few weeks ago we announced significant investments in assisting people with the cost of living, changes to the fuel excise, a low and middle income tax offset, and additional help for pensioners as well, and other concession card holders and welfare recipients, to veterans included. That $250 straight into their bank account, which should already be there by now. But on top of that, there's also cut price to medicines and changes to the pharmaceutical benefits scheme that will help people reach their thresholds quicker, make sure that their medicines are more affordable. So these are very practical, sensible and responsible measures to help people with those cost of living changes. But we also know that should interest rates rise tomorrow, that people will be feeling it when they make their mortgage repayments. That's why it's so important that we have strong economic management. In fact, we've maintained a AAA credit rating from all three credit rating agencies across the globe. Now, what that means is essentially an international tick of approval for your country's economic management. That helps keeps interest rates that bit lower, because that's the rate.
The Prime Minister says we shouldn't. The Prime Minister says we shouldn't look at the political fallout of a rate rise. We should look at the impact on Australians. But then he goes on to say, like you are, the way we manage government finances will impact potentially what happens to rates. So it is very political, the impact, isn't it?
Well, it's true that having a strong economy and good economic management has an impact on interest rates. At the rate at which your government can borrow from overseas, that feeds into the Reserve Bank cash rate, which is, of course, the rate at which banks can lend to each other, which determines where the mortgage rates for consumers. So there is a connection. However, the most important thing to understand, Kieran, is that over the last 2 years, because of this government's response to COVID, there's been a build-up of savings on household budgets, around $250 billion, which will help buffer any changes to interest rates that people feel tomorrow. We know that a lot of people have already factored in an interest rate rise because we were at historically low interest rates. They've already factored an interest rate rise into their mortgages, into their spending patterns.
Labor, with its Help to Buy plan, it'll be a popular move for many. Isn't it a good idea to open up home ownership to another group of Australians who otherwise might not be able to buy their own home with government equity, as has happened in WA for some 30 years under a state government scheme?
Kieran, the coalition government always wants people to be able to pursue the great Australian dream of owning your own home. What we don't want is for it to turn into a nightmare where the government owns nearly half of your home. This is a very ill thought out policy. It hasn't got any detail, no meat to the bones. What happens if you do a renovation? Does the government reap the benefit of your hard work there and the money that you've invested into improving your own home?
Labor has actually said on that, just to explain though, on that renovation issue, they've said that it would be there'd be an evaluation done, and that anyone, say you put a pool in, you would then take the growth in the capital of that property due to the pool or any other asset upon sale. So and apparently that's how the Victorian government does it through its policy on this.
And Kieran, doesn't this sound like an administration nightmare? What's it going to cost to administer this scheme? The opposition have said it's only around $300 million. I can't imagine that could possibly be the case. We know that the similar schemes that are set up with state governments haven't been very popular. There hasn't been a great take-up because people don't want to own their home with the government. They want to own their home outright, and that's why the Coalition's housing policies have been all about allowing people to get into their first home or potentially their second home for single parents with low deposits. That we make sure that that the people that are applying for these programs are creditworthy. They check out with the bank, but we just help them get that leg up on the deposit. They're good borrowers.
But it's not just Labor doing this.
They just need assistance with the deposit, and they own their own home outright.
The former Premier in Tasmania, Peter Gutwein, announced a policy similar to this in February of this year, and Dominic Perrottet is planning one for their budget in June. So it's not just Labor governments undertaking this sort of approach.
And the take-up hasn't been terrific because people want to own their own home. They don't want to be beholden to the government. What happens when you pass on? Do your children end up with a debt to the government? These are all questions that Labor really needs to answer on this policy scheme. But more importantly, if there are other states that are doing these schemes, why duplicate them? If they haven't been taken up, then why would they work when the federal government offers them? We believe that the Coalition's housing policies, allowing people to save for their first home using the turbocharged superannuation savings, something that the Labor Party objected to, something that they voted against. We believe that that will help people save for their first homes, and for those people that need a leg up, we're going to give them help with the first home with the home guarantee scheme, allowing them to enter on the housing ladder with as little as a 5% deposit or a 2% deposit if they are single parents with dependents.
Anthony Albanese at that May Day march, traditional march in support of workers, obviously a lot of support for him there with the union representation and so on. But is it an argument where he says he's going to make it a priority with the Fair Work Commission if the principle of the same job, same pay, that will be enshrined within the Fair Work Commission if he wins government? Is that something that could have more popularity outside of the likes of the May Day march that we saw in Brisbane today?
Well, I think we're beginning to see the real Anthony Albanese at work here. He's been playing a very small target strategy for a long period of time, but the left, who we saw out there marching at the May Day marches this year, have a very big agenda. And in fact, workplace industrial relations is just one of those agendas. We also saw signs out there at those marches for dismantling the Defence Forces, for destroying capitalism. Extinction Rebellion were out there. The CFMEU were out there. Are those the kind of industrial relations practices that Anthony Albanese is supporting? I think that this is just a taste of what really is behind this very small target strategy that the Labor Party and Anthony Albanese are playing.
Minister for Superannuation and Financial Services, Jane Hume, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kieran.